Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first MaterialCenter Global Webinar in 2014. My name is Chris Young. With me is Richard Rissigi, and together we will be introducing and demonstrating MSC's next-generation material management platform, MaterialCenter. First, we are going to cover MSC's material vision and what we plan to achieve with MaterialCenter. Next, we will introduce the product as well as its key features. Then, we will dive into a live demonstration, and then end with a preview of some of the exciting new features in our 2014 release. First and foremost, our goal is to capture your data, provide an easy method to search, compare, and validate this data. Then, we want to make sure only the users that are authorized to see this data can access it, and that this data comes from a consistent, approved source with traceable processes. Now, if that was it, we wouldn't be very different from many data management tools out there. So next, we really want to focus on integrating simulation aspects into MaterialCenter. This will allow users to simulate virtual material allowables using ICME-based technology. And as we did in the past with Envision, we want to deliver the most up-to-date commercial data from our vendors and suppliers and partners such as ASM and MMPDS. Then using MaterialCenter as a process engine, we will have the ability to automate virtual tests, automate report generation, and many other activities straight out of your browser. And of course, the ultimate end goal is to deliver high quality and high fidelity FEA data to the engineering community. So MaterialCenter will be the key driver for managing your data and automating processes. And then Digimat is the ICME platform for performing simulations with the data that is in MaterialCenter. So how will MaterialCenter accomplish this? So first, let's take, for example, a case study from Boeing on how this platform can be used to benefit your organization. As an example, an aerospace development program consists of many different tiers, starting at the bottom with material development and all the way to the top to component testing and validation. And of course, with strict FAA regulations, large amounts of tests must be conducted and need to be properly managed and traced for at least 25 years in a single program. Today, the time and labor associated with these programs can be represented as such. And with MaterialCenter's automation and processing and data management tools, as well as integrations with solvers and CAE products, we can streamline your material-related simulation disciplines so you can reduce the costs and resources associated with physical testing. So once again, how will MaterialCenter accomplish this? So first and foremost, we want to import your data, whether it's test data or design data. Then once your data is in MaterialCenter, you can export it back out in a variety of different formats such as Excel, text, XML, or MATML, and on customizable templates. And by doing so, you can reduce your data using third-party applications and then send this data back into MaterialCenter. As mentioned earlier, MaterialCenter will be integrated with Digimat, which is a multi-scale, multi-phase material modeling platform. So from MaterialCenter, you can define virtual test conditions and then send these test conditions and material data to Digimat. And then Digimat will generate virtual material allowables, which will be sent back into MaterialCenter. Then MaterialCenter's reporting tools will collect all these results and help engineers select the material that best suits their application. MaterialCenter also has a built-in approval system that ensures that incoming data is properly reviewed before being published and viewed by other end users. We also provide a clean interface for design engineers and analysts to search, compare, and export the data that they are authorized to see. And then lastly, if engineering is a sport, then the playing field is anywhere around the globe, and the players are the various users involved in the completion of a single project. MaterialCenter also has the tools that allow you to define workflows and assign tasks to individual users. And then the statuses of these tasks can then be tracked from a project dashboard within the web interface. So what does this look like when all these components work together? Here's a graphical representation of MaterialCenter's ecosystem. At the upper left, you can see that first, we want to bring in your data, whether it's physical test data or virtual test data. You can then modify and reduce this data and send this through an approval process, and then release this data to the appropriate audience for viewing. And then along with the software, at the lower left, we can see that we are delivering third-party material data such as ASM and MMPDS. Then once this data is in the system, you can export it back out to a variety of different formats, and even from within integrated applications, which we'll be demonstrating shortly. And then finally, we have notification tools in place that will keep you up to date on any material revisions, work requests, or project statuses. So what is MaterialCenter in one page? It is a management system that focuses on capturing and managing your data all the way from test data to the consumption of this data by different CAE applications and products. We have an ICME component in place for simulating virtual material allowables. We have the ability to automate test processes. Users have complete traceability of all the data in the system. And there are also built-in tools for approvals and work requests. Custom export functions can also be written out to specific solvers. And we have a very deep client integrations, which again, we will be demonstrating very shortly. And then very lastly, it is very easy to install. So IT investment is very minimal. With that said, we're going to go ahead and demonstrate our MaterialCenter 2014 alpha version. So MaterialCenter is a web-based client. For sake of this demonstration, I'll be working out of Google Chrome. When the user logs in through the browser, he'll immediately be redirected to his home page. Now, the home page provides users quick and easy access to data or tools that are particularly useful for their applications. So, for instance, notifications and pending tasks are accessible through the user's personalized and customizable homepage. Our interface is very simple and very easy to use. We provide different tabs that are dedicated to specific functions. For example, under the Navigate tab, users can browse through the material data through an organized tree structure and a customizable list view. And of course, users will only be able to see and search materials or properties that they are authorized to see. You can switch between different tree displays to display different databases or different tree formats. And when I select a node within the tree, a list appears on the right that contains all the materials within that node. So you can view multiple materials at once. This list view is also entirely customizable. So I can modify the columns that I want to appear, and I can even rearrange these columns and then save it as a private view. Now the columns are also interactive, so I can directly select on a column and say I want to sort them ascending, descending, or even apply filters onto these columns. So as you can see, a lot of tools around customization and organization of your material display. And within this list view, each individual row represents an individual material. So when I double click on a row, the material will appear in a user-friendly datasheet view. What we see here is what we consider a single record. And in MaterialCenter, a single record allows you to store ranges of properties. So very simply, I can see that this modulus property is represented as a range of values. When I click on this range, I can view all the individual properties associated with that range. You can also add additional columns of data within a single record, which can be expanded or collapsed for ease of viewing. And within a record, you can attach files, you can set links to other records, And you can even interactively view curve data using our built-in curve tools. To launch this tool, you simply have to select on the curve icon. And now, from within the web interface, I can directly right-click onto the curve to perform a variety of different analytical functions. So I can interpolate values off of this curve. So very simply, I can apply an x value and compute the corresponding value on the opposite axis. We also have the ability to store multiple curves within a single tool. And we have the ability to apply mathematical operations on these curves. So for instance, users have the ability to select between multiple curves and take the average of them. We have several other mathematical operations built into the product, such as addition, subtraction, integration, and multiplication. So for instance, as a very basic example, I'm just going to go ahead and select this curve and say I want to integrate it. And once I hit apply, you can see that the result is directly plotted onto the tool. And of course, I can save this curve or print it for engineering reports. As mentioned earlier, in addition to capturing the data, our goal is to capture the processes involved in the creation or the consumption of this data, as well as all the pedigree data, so the relationships between the materials and all the properties. So within the record, I can easily view who created the data, who modified it, and even who exported it to a third-party tool in a simple, easy-to-view flowchart. So that way, if the data was bad, so to speak, I can track down who used it and with what application from within the record. So now that I have very briefly introduced the UI, I want to go over how you can manage your material and your test data. But here's the kicker. I'm going to do it completely outside of the web interface and completely from within Microsoft Excel. In MaterialCenter, we have very deep integration tools that allow you to manage, edit, and revise material data using these integrated applications. Now, MaterialCenter's plugins are directly accessible from within the server. And we are planning to deliver them in 3 different varieties. The first is a direct plugin into the application itself, which in this case is Microsoft Excel. And the second is in the form of a standalone application with a graphical interface, which can be used and connected to various third-party CAD, CAE, or PLM products. And the last variety, which is still in development, is the standalone client, but in the form of a command line tool. So users will have the ability to execute REST API queries and commands from within the command line environment. So once I have this plugin downloaded and installed and open up Microsoft Excel, you can see that a MaterialCenter tab will appear at the top of my Excel file with menu actions in the ribbon. So from within the ribbon, I can establish a connection to my database simply by providing the URL to the configuration settings. And then from within Excel, I can directly log into my database. And when I click on Retrieve, you'll see that I can select between the available materials in the database that I am authorized to see. And you'll notice that the display of the materials within your Retrieve window is similar to the display that you saw earlier in the Navigation tab. On the left, we have our tree view, and on the right, we have a list view that is populated depending on the node that is selected. So I can simply select the material and then select a mapping template. And now I can click Retrieve to export my material data from the database onto a customized Excel template. Now, it's also key to note that the template that I selected can be used for both import or export. So to support this bidirectional workflow, only a single mapping file is required. So now I can apply modifications directly to the generated Excel file by applying changes to my material in this Excel file. So for instance, I'm going to start by changing the name of my material. Then I'm going to go ahead and change the existing properties. Now, MaterialCenter's Excel logic is dynamic, so I'm not only limited to modifying or updating the existing properties, I can add new properties as well. We also have the ability to capture repeating patterns. So in the event that you want to update your spreadsheet of material data, you can do so simply by repeating the pattern of the logic that is captured within your mapping file. So just very simply, I'm just going to create an arbitrary curve with random values. Before I publish this into the database, I just want to go quickly review the changes that I made. So I went ahead and I started by retrieving an existing material in my database. Then I went ahead and I updated the name of this material. I changed the existing property values, and I also added a property that did not previously exist. And in a similar fashion, I created an additional stress strain curve in addition to the existing fatigue curves, simply by following the format that was defined in my mapping file. So now back in my MaterialCenter tab, I can click on the Publish button and check my Update Existing checkbox. Then this will create a second revision of the material in my database. And you can see that once the process is complete, Excel even provides you with a nice little summary that describes all the changes that have been made to the materials or to the properties. So now that you have seen how you can manage your material data using an Excel template that comes with the installation of MaterialCenter that we provide, you're probably wondering, well, my organization uses a customized template of our own that looks nothing like this template. So how do I create my own mapping template, and how difficult is it to create? Now, in MaterialCenter's 2014 plugin, we also provide you the capability of creating this mapping file from within the Excel interface and environment. So very simply, I have pulled up a very simple customized template for data input. And you can see that I have data spread across two different spreadsheets, two different tables in two different locations of the same spreadsheet. What we did in 2014 is we provided a point and shoot mechanism to make it easy to map. So very simply, I can just highlight the location of the data in my Excel spreadsheet, right-click it, and say Map Range. This is a proof of concept. I won't be going over all the individual options. And now I just only have to repeat the same step for the second set of tables. So this is a two-step process. First, we need to define, we already have defined the location of the data that is in the spreadsheet. Next, I need to associate this information with the schema in my database. You'll notice that once I have done so, the plugin's fuzzy logic feature will automatically attempt to perform the mapping by taking a best guess at the attribute from your schema, which corresponds to the selection that I made earlier. So this is obviously so that we can save you some time, so you don't have to manually associate each individual piece of data to an attribute that is in the database. So very simply, I can see that in my first table, I made 3 header selections: material type, material classification, and material form. You can see that the first guess hit the mark. This is based on my knowledge of the existing schema. I know that this is the attribute I want this data to be associated with. The second set of information, however, you can see it didn't hit the mark quite as well. So you can tell that, in fact, in addition to the top guess, the Excel's fuzzy logic also takes the top 20 guesses. So by simply selecting on the drop-down menu, I can fix the selections. So I can ensure that the data is properly mapped to the attributes in my database. And of course, we can also use the attribute search to do a more refined type of search. then now I'm going to go ahead and simply resume the completion of the mapping process. So very quickly, I just completed the mapping process for mapping this customized spreadsheet. And now that the mapping process is complete, from within the tool, I can also validate and preview my new Excel template that I've just created to ensure that the data is formatted correctly when I bring it into my database. And then finally, I can save the template directly to my database and then publish a material with this template directly from Excel. So in less than a few minutes, I have not only demonstrated the ability to retrieve data, modify it, and publish it back into the database, but I've also created a bidirectional mapping for a very simple Excel template. So I manage my data completely through the Excel environments without having to enter my web application. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a very basic example that we have demonstrated. We have received over 24 different Excel spreadsheets with very complex logic from many different customers, and not a single one of them were we not able to support with our Excel integrated features. So now I will turn it over to Richard, who will be demonstrating our other integration tools with MaterialCenter.
Thank you, Chris. So what I'd like to do is demonstrate an integrated client as well that works by being integrated with various finite element analysis tools. Now, the purpose of this client is to be able to export material data and then import it directly into your preprocessor for your finite element analysis. Now, what I'd like to do, though, is before diving into a Patran demo, I want to show the standalone version of this client. So here. So very similar to the Excel add-in, you will be prompted to input your username, password, and URL for MaterialCenter. So here we can get our link, paste it directly into the client, put in username, password. Now, after doing this, your login information will be stored. So as you will see shortly, when going into Patran, we will not be required to log in again. So very similar to MaterialCenter, we again have the navigation tree along with our list of material here on the right. So what I can do here is either browse through every material data bank at once or individually select individual data banks or libraries. Now, going back to materials, I can also go into here, look into my metals, go further down into ferrous metals, and we have various search tools that allow us to find exactly what we're looking for. So what I can do here is sort my columns either by ascending or descending order. So here I'm sorting ascending. And then clicking a second time, we then sort our column by descending. What we can also do is apply filters to each individual column. By right-clicking, I have a filter option that pops up and then allows me to select exactly what type of subclass I choose to look at. And if that's not enough, I can also search directly in the upper right-hand corner for my desired material. So here, let's say I want to look for cast. The resulting list view will be every material that has the word cast associated with it. And if I want to clear my search, I can just erase it and press enter. Next, what I'd like to do is show how to export my data into a computer-aided engineering material card, which will contain data in a format that can then be imported to various analysis tools. So I will select my export directory, in this case to my desktop, and then I can filter to the various materials for which I've already created cards. Now these are created within MaterialCenter's Create CAE Data menu. Now I can select each individual card from 4 different materials and then click Export. As you can see on my desktop, I now have a file named MCED, which going into it contains the various data from my materials. So next, what I'd like to do is demonstrate the Patran version of this client. So going into Patran, the first thing you'll notice is we have a MaterialCenter tab, very much like the Excel plugin. So as I've mentioned earlier, the auto login will take over as soon as you've put in your information the first time. So I don't need to log in again. So going in here, I can immediately go and export my material card directly into Patran. And again, the same interface applies. You are able to search in the exact same fashion and apply the same filters. Pressing open. As you can see, my material card has now appeared, and as soon as I click on it, I get a summary of all of my data, which I can then go ahead and apply directly to my material. As you can see in the tree, the material card has been now inputted, and you can continue on with your analysis. Now I'd like to turn it back over to Chris, who will explain to us some of the features that will be coming in soon.
Thank you very much, Richard. So finally, we have a lot of exciting new features coming to MaterialCenter 2014 that are available as previews today. So these are just right around the corner. So first and foremost, in 2014 is a feature, is one of the first features that I'm personally most excited for. So in 2014, we'll have advanced 2D plotting capabilities that allows users to graphically represent their data in a variety of different formats. So for example, users will be able to define one or more properties and then plot and view these materials across different types of plots, such as scatter plots and spider charts, for example, and even pie charts and bar charts. And then these charts, of course, will be interactive. So for instance, in a scatter plot, by selecting onto a point, that will take you directly to the material data sheet. In 2014, users will also be able to easily create and edit material data, parameter data, property data, and source data straight from within the web interface. So for instance, in order to create a material, the user will have the ability to select a schema, which will then create a form from which the user can populate information and create material data off of. So this will provide a very quick and easy way for end users, material engineers, administrative level users to create and manage material information. And the next feature is a complementary feature to the Digimat integration. So it is also very useful in the realm of composites, and that is our material assembly support. So with this feature, users will be able to define the relationships between the materials and its components. And as I mentioned, in the realm of composites, for instance, the users will be able to specify the stacking sequences and the different materials that are comprised of this composite. And he'll be able to factor in a lot of different parameters that are customizable, such as orientation, thickness, and fiber length. Lastly, is a very highly anticipated Digimat integration virtual test feature. So from within the web browser, the user will be able to define a virtual test definition as represented in the flow diagram below. So given a set of test conditions and the laminate, which is comprised of multiple materials, the user will be able after defining these conditions, the user will be able to send this information through Digimat in a series of predefined solvers in an HPC environment. And then once the analysis is complete, the virtual allowables are generated and then sent back into the input laminate so that users can validate physical test data with virtual test data. And of course, all the intermediate files and properties will be captured, traceable, and available for a detailed review. And of course, this capability opens the path for many different possibilities. So for instance, users will be able to perform design studies on composites by varying design parameters, as I mentioned earlier, such as orientation, thickness, and fiber length. And our virtual test feature we'll be able to generate different laminate material specifications in the form of virtual material allowables. And then finally, MaterialCenter's reporting tools will be able to collect all these results and help engineers in selecting the material that best suits their application. And of course, as we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, test automation will also be possible. So instead of running one test at a time, the user will be able to select multiple tests up front, and MaterialCenter will calculate the rest and automate it. So here's a prototype video that I'm showing right now. And as I mentioned earlier, from within this feature, users will be able to define their own test conditions and specimen conditions. And then MaterialCenter will automatically run through the appropriate solvers and through Digimat generate virtual material allowables, which will be sent back into MaterialCenter for further analysis. Now we are dividing this feature up into two different phases. 2014 is limited to layups built in the same material and the same ply. However, after 2014, we're aiming to support heterogeneous layups, which will give the materials engineer more flexibility in designing and simulating custom composite test data. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining this presentation today. And we will now open the floor for any questions.